What's up, everybody? This is Domingo here on Network, and today's Yu-Gi-Oh video I'm going to be doing a deck profile. And the deck profile that I'm going to be doing in this video is going to be my updated version of my Ice Barrier deck profile. So without further ado, let's get this Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile started. So here we go.
It's time to do.
Alright guys, so we're going to do my updated version of my Ice Barrier deck profile for the post-freezing change. Of course, Ice Barrier got new support in the structure deck freezing change, so that's pretty good. Of course, the structure freezing change, Ice Barrier's got new support. There's some good things about it and there's some bad things about it. But overall, I do like the new support for Ice Barrier. I just wish it could have been a lot better with it. I feel like Konami could have done a lot better with the new Ice Barrier support. I feel like they could have done a lot better than what they're doing. But overall, the new Ice Barrier support, it did help Ice Barriers a little bit, just a little bit. And Ice Barriers, in my opinion, because of the new support, this is my opinion, Ice Barriers is not as bad as it used to be because of the new support. So, and I do love the new support, so I'm just going to show you guys the main deck, the extra deck, and the side deck, as well as explain my card choices and ratios. Of course, I did make a side deck for Ice Barriers because I've seen some other people, talking about, the Ice Barriers and figure out what Ice Barrier cards do they want to use for a side deck for Ice Barriers. So I decided to create my side deck for Ice Barriers and show you guys what cards if you want to play for in the side deck of Ice Barriers. So, and also this is just a pure version of my Ice Barrier deck profile, just to let you guys know. So let's not waste any time. So without further ado, let's get this deck profile started. So here we go. We're going to start off with the main deck right now. So let's start the main deck first. All right. So first off, we're going to do the monsters. I'm going to show off the new Ice Barrier support by showing you 3 copies of General Wayne of the Ice Barrier. General Wayne is pretty good. It has three effects. First effect says any spell and trap cards your opponent is going sent to the graveyard is banished instead. And the second effect says you can only use each effect of General Wayne of the Ice Barrier once per turn. If your opponent controls a monster and you control an Ice Barrier monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. And the third effect says if this card is normal or special summon, you could add 1 Ice Barrier spell and trap card from your deck to your hand. So that's pretty cool as well. Banishing your opponent's spells and trap cards, it's really helped out a lot, especially if your opponent play like so many good spells and trap cards and you want to like banish them. So that's pretty good as well. So it's like a Microcosmo, but only works on the opponent and only works spells and trap, which is good. The second effect, the free special summoning. It's okay, but it's not the best. But it's only good like if you play Ice Bears, if you go second with Ice Bears, and if your opponent has a monster, then you can control an Ice Bear monster, and then you special summon the General Wayne for your hand. So that's pretty good for if you go second. And the third effect is really good. When it's like normal special summon, special add, you search for an Ice Bear spells and trap card. So it's like an Elemental Hero Strauss, but for Ice Bears, searching for a spells and trap card, that's actually pretty good. So. And this card, I like to play this at 3. I see some people play it 2, but 3 is actually better in my opinion. This is a card you want to play at 3 in my opinion. Next, I do play 3 copies of Revealer of the Ice Barrier. This is another Ice Barrier card you also want to play at 3. She's really good. And her effect says, while you control another face-up Ice Barrier monster, your opponent cannot tribute summon. You can only use each effect of Revealer of the Ice Barrier once per turn. You can discard 1 card from your hand and special summon 1 Ice Barrier tutor monster from your deck. Of course, if you activate that effect, you cannot special summon any other monster for the rest of the turn except for one monster. And the third effect says, if you activate an Ice Barrier effect that has an effect to discard or send a card from your hand to the graveyard, you could banish Reveal it from your graveyard and instead of one of those cards. So that's actually pretty good. Of course, the first effect, preventing your opponent from tribute summoning, it does come up at times. It's good against Monarchs. Like if you face Monarchs, this card says no to Monarchs. They cannot tribute summon, so that's pretty good as well. No tribute summoning for Monarchs, of course. The second effect is really good. Like, you can discard any card from your hand, special summon Ice Barrier monster from your Ice Barrier Tuna monster from your deck. So it has like the same effect as a Crystal Hack of Fibers, but an effect monster. And the good thing about the reveal of Ice Barrier, this card can also help you special to link summon for your Crystal Hack of Fibers. Because remember, even though it says if you activate the effect and you cannot special summon any monster except for one of the monsters, Crystal Hack of Fibers is a water attribute monster, so that's pretty good. And also, all your monsters that are in the main or the extra deck will always be mostly water attribute monsters. So it's pretty cool. And the third effect, banishing Revealer, like if you activate an Ice Bear monster that has either the scarring or sending from a card from the end of the graveyard, banish Revealer instead. It's really good as well. So this card is really good. This card you always got to play at 3. Next, I play 3 copies of Speaker for the Ice Barrier. Speaker's pretty good. She's actually pretty good. I love this artwork of Speaker. And of course, you got 3 effects. Of course, the first effect says, while you control another face-up Ice Barrier monster, monsters your opponent controls that are in defense position cannot change their battle position. You can only use each effect of Speaker for the Ice Barrier once per turn. If you control a face-up Ice Barrier monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. If you control an Ice Barrier monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard and special summon one Ice Barrier token that is like a level 1 water attribute, aqua type, attack and defense is 0. So that's actually pretty good. This card's pretty good. Now the first effect, you're not really going to use it because you mostly want to use the second effect and the third effect. Of course, the second effect of Speaker is really good. And the good thing about that, it's a free extender that has no bad restrictions, because I know a couple Ice Bear monsters that I know that has like the same effect as Speaker, but it has like a bad restriction. But Speaker does not have a bad restriction, which is actually good. It's a free special summoning. And also the third effect is good too, like banishing a token monster, and it help you go for like your synchro plays and your link plays as well. And this is a card you always got to play at 3 as well, because she's a really good extender, and special summon Ice Bear token helps out a lot for your synchro plays and your link plays and stuff. And it's really amazing. And the good thing about Speaker though, Speaker is level 4, which means you can go access to Bahamas Shark, and then you could go for your Totally Awesome. So that's actually pretty good as well. Love Speaker for the Ice Barrier. Next I do play 3 copies of Prior of the Ice Barrier. It has the same effect as Speaker though. The one that says, if you control a face of Ice Barrier, you special summon this card for your hand. But Prior has a bad restriction, unfortunately. If you activate that effect, you cannot special summon level 5 or higher monsters the turn you activate that effect. And his second effect says you contribute this card and special summon one Ice Bear monster from your graveyard and special summon it. So that's pretty good as well. So it's a monster reborn, but for Ice Bears, and you can special summon any Ice Bear monster from your graveyard. But the first effect, it has a bad restriction, which is kind of sucks though in my opinion. I feel like it should have never got a bad restriction, like special summon Prior for your hand, and then you can ask for level 5 or higher. Yeah, it's not that great though, but the only good thing about this though, there's other ways that you can use Prior's second effect without activating Prior's first effect. So just let you go, because there's like other ways you can do it. So it's pretty cool as well. And I like playing 3 copies of Prior, so it's pretty cool. Next, I'm gonna go for the Ice Barrier tuners. The first ones I'm gonna show you is 3 copies of Defender. I've seen some Ice Barrier players play Defender at 1. I don't even like that ratio, to be honest. I like Defender at 3. I feel like 3 is better in my opinion, because I feel like 1 is not good enough though. Of course, Defender is a really good tuner monster. If you control, as the effect says, if you control a face-up Ice Bear monster, if you control another face-up Ice Bear monster you control, then your monsters your opponent control cannot declare an attack that has attack points that is either greater or higher than Defender's defense points. Like for example, Defender's defense point is 1600, so that means your opponent's monster with 1600 or more attack cannot declare an attack. So that's pretty cool as well. And of course, it's a level 3 tuner, so go for your synchro plays and also go for your Crystal Hack of Fibers as well. And next, the others Ice Barrier tuner monsters I play 2 copies of Hexa, Spirit of the Ice Barrier, and I love this artwork of Hexa because he looks so adorable. But yes, Hexa, he has the effect that is a Ice Barrier tuner, and his effects, and these are the effects says, the first effect says if your opponent, if you control another Ice Barrier monster, monsters your opponent control lose 500 attack and effects, and you can only use this effect of Hexa Spirit of the Ice Barrier once per turn. if you could send one a level 3 or lower ice barrier monster from your deck to the graveyard. You could send, but it has to be a level 3 or lower. And if you do that, then Hexa's level will become the same level as that ice barrier monster that you sent for the deck to graveyard. So it's a foolish barrier effect for ice barriers, but it has to be a level 3 or lower. Like if you send a level 2 ice barrier monster, this Hexa's level will become 2. If it's a level 3, then Hexa's level becomes 3. So that's actually pretty good as well. So manipulating his level and then increasing it, all that stuff. That's really good as well. This card could be special summoned from Reveal of the Ice Barrier's effect, special summon from the deck, and then you can activate Hexa's effect to send a level 3 or lower ice barrier monster for your deck to the graveyard and stuff. So that's pretty good as well. So it's really good, And two of these is fine. Next, I'm going to show you the 1-ups of my Ice Barrier monsters. So first, I'm going to show you. I'm going to play 1 copy of Medium of the Ice Barrier, 1 copy of Daisojo of the Ice Barrier, and 1 copy of General Raiho of the Ice Barrier. I don't play General Katana or General Ganarima because I like to play these cards because, in my opinion, these 3 cards right here has better effects in my opinion. And if you want to know their effects, Medium, this one has an effect that says if your opponent has 4 more cards on the field more than you do, you special summon this card for your hand. Her second effect says your opponent can only activate 1 spell/trap card per turn. So it has the same effect as Shogun from the 6 Samurais deck. But for Ice Bears, Daisojo is really good. It has 2 effects. If this card is normal or special or flip summon, you could change it to defense position. And if this card has another effect that says face up ice barrier monster you control cannot be destroyed by spells and trap cards, so that's actually good. General Raiho's effect, he's really good as well. It has a breakthrough skill effect, but for effect monster, it's even better because his effect says when your opponent's effect monster activate their effects and resolve, they have to discard 1 card from the hand. If they do not discard 1 card from the hand, then their monster effect that is on the field will be negated. So General Raiho negates an opponent's monster effect from the field, so that's pretty good as well. These are just the 1-ups I play because I feel like these cards have really better effects in my opinion. So that's why I play these cards in my opinion. Now for the other 1-ups, I do play 1 copy of Strategist of the Ice Barrier and 1 copy of Dance Prince of the Ice Barrier. Strategist of the Ice Barrier, his effect is really good. Once per turn, you send 1 Ice Barrier monster from your hand to the graveyard and draw 1 card. So it's like an upstart goblin. Of course, you have to send an Ice Barrier card. And the good thing about that, if you have Revealer in your graveyard and you activate this effect, instead of sending an Ice Barrier monster to the hand to the graveyard, you can banish Revealer's effect and then you just draw 1 card like that. So that's pretty good as well. Dance Princess is pretty good. Her effect says, once per turn, while you control another face-up Ice Barrier monster, you can reveal any Ice Barrier monsters from your hand, reveal them, and you could target the same amount of cards in your opponent's spells and trap cards that are like set, like face down, and you could bounce them back to your opponent's hand. So it's like a giant Trune, but it only works if your opponent's spells and trap cards that are like set, like face down. So, but Dance Princess effect is pretty good as well. So it's pretty cool. So it's like a giant Trune, but only works if your opponent has like set spells and trap cards that are face down. So it's pretty good as well. So these are the 1-ups. And the last Ice Barrier monster that I do play 1 copy of Zuijin of the Ice Barrier. Zuijin is pretty cool as well. It does help out this deck a lot. Has 2 effects. First effect says you contribute this card special summon a level 5 or higher Ice Barrier monster from your hand. Second effect says if this card is in your graveyard, except the turn that it is sent there, you can target 1 water monster that is level 3 or higher. Reduce that level exactly down by 2 and special summon this card from your graveyard. And if you activate that effect, then Zuijin will be banished when it leaves the field. And of course, you can only use each effect of Zuijin of the Ice Barrier once per turn. So this card, is pretty good. The good thing about this card, if you have a level 5 or higher monster, like it helps you go for your General Wayne, your General Raiho, your Media, or your Daisojo, or any other level 5 or higher Ice Barrier monster. And of course, special summon this card from the graveyard by targeting 1 monster you control, reduce the level down exactly by 2. It's a pretty good extent. It helps out a lot. It's good for if you want to go for your synchro plays or your late plays and stuff. So pretty good. And I feel like you only need 1 of Zuijin in my opinion. And the last cards I played to round off the monsters, I do play hand traps in this deck. The only hand traps though I play is 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. Ash Blossom, this card is good. always got to play this card 3 because this is a really good hand trap. You can play any other hand trap you want. It's all up to personal preference. That's going to be it for the monsters. Now we're going to move on to the spells. I play 3 copies of Winds Over the Ice Barrier. This card is a really good spell card. What this card does is you contribute any number of Ice Barrier monsters you control, send them to the graveyard, and then you can special summon level 4 lower Ice Barrier monsters, with different names from each other, and special summon them from the deck to the field. And the other effect says you could if this card is in your graveyard, except the turn that this card is sent to the graveyard, you can you can banish this card from the graveyard, target one of your Ice Barrier monsters that is either banished or is in the graveyard, and add it to your hand. And of course, you can only use each effect of Winds Over the Ice Barrier once per turn. So that's pretty good. The good thing about this card, even though it says you had to special summon level 4 or lower Ice Barrier monster for your deck, it's still good because like if you want to go for your synchro, it sets you up for your synchro plays and your link plays and all that stuff as well. So it's still pretty good. And then, targeting an Ice Barrier monster that is either banished or graveyard and added to your hand helps out a lot as well. So that's pretty good. Next, I do play 3 copies of Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier. This card is really good. So Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier has the same effect as World Legacy Guard Dragon, but for Ice Barrier, its effect saying when you activate this card, you can target a level 4 lower Ice Barrier monster in graveyard, special summon it. And the second effect says while you control 3 or more Ice Barrier monsters, you control cannot be destroyed by an opponent's monster's effect that was special summoned from the extra deck, and you can only activate 1 Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier once per turn. So that's pretty good. First effect, special summon level 4 lower Ice Barrier graveyard is like a monster born, pretty good. And also protecting your Ice Barrier monsters that from an opponent's monster that was special summoned from the extra deck is a pretty good bonus as well. And I see some people play this at 2. I feel like 3 is better in my opinion, so it's pretty good. It's a really good continuous spell card. Next, I do play 3 copies of Medallion of the Ice Barrier. This is a Rhoda for Ice Barriers. You just add 1 Ice Barrier monster for your deck to your hand, so that's pretty good. It could be any Ice Barrier monsters. If you have like 2 or 3 copies in your hand, you can activate them, like all 3 of them and stuff. So it's pretty cool. And this is a card you always gotta play at 3. Medallion of the Ice Barrier is always good at 3. For the other spell cards I play 2 copies of Salvage. Salvage is pretty good since most of your Ice Barrier monsters are like attack points is 15 or less. You target 2 1 monster 15 or less in your graveyard and add them to your hand. So that's pretty good as well. Especially if you want to add cards like your Zuijin and then normal summon and special level 5 higher monster for your hand and all this. So there's a lot of places you could do. Or you can even add a hand, then you get the Scar by using Bryonics effect as well. So it's pretty cool. So 2 copies of Salvage. And for the 1-ups of the spell cards, I do play 1 copy of Call by the Grave, just to, if your opponent trying to interrupt your combos play with the hand traps, Call by the Grave, just stop it. 1 copy of Red Genki because you want to get rid of all your monsters your opponent control. 1 copy of Harvey's Feather Duster just to get rid of your opponent's spells and trap cards they control. And 1 copy of Monster Born because it's a really good extender, special summoning 1 monster in the playground and either puts grab special summon your side of the field. It helps out a lot. So that's it for the spell cards. Now, as far as the trap cards, I only play 4 trap cards. So I do play 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. Heavy Storm Duster is pretty good. You just target up to 2 spells and trap cards on the field and destroy. But you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this card. But it doesn't matter though because you're always gonna activate Heavy Storm Duster during your opponent's turn. So it's still pretty good, And getting rid of your opponent's 2 spells and trap cards will really help out a lot as well. Next, I play 1 copy of White Howling. White Howling is pretty good as well. What this card does, you control a water monster, target 1 spell card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, and for the rest of that turn, your opponent cannot activate any spell card. So that's pretty good. So it's just banish an opponent's spell card and stop your opponents from activating any spell card that turn. So that's pretty good as well. Of course, you have to control 1 monster in order to activate the effect, so it's pretty good. And the last chart card to round out the main deck, I do 1 copy of Terror of Trishula. You only need to play 1 copy of Terror of Trishula. If you want to know the effect of this card, its effect says, apply this effect in sequence depending of any number of the Ice Barrier Synchro monsters you control with different names. If it's 1+, you can banish 1 card your opponent control. If it's 2+, banish 1 card from your opponent's graveyard. If it's 3+, banish 1 random card from your opponent's hand. And also the other effect says when your opponent activate a card in effect that targets a Ice Barrier Synchro monster you control, you could banish this card from your graveyard to negate the effect. You can only use each effect of Terror Trishula once per turn. The effect is okay, not the best, but you know the only two problems I have is number one, this card doesn't say Ice Barrier card in its name, and it does not search with General Wayne. Unfortunately, I wish it wouldn't say a Ice Barrier track card in its name, so that way you can search with General Wayne. And the second problem is this card only works for Ice Barrier Synchro monsters, and I wish it would have been for all Ice Barrier monsters. That would have been good, but other than that, Terra Trishula is an okay card, and you only need to play one copy of it. So that's it for the main deck. Now we're going to move on to the extra deck. So I'm going to start off with the Synchros. I do play one copy of Trishula, Zero Dragon of the Ice Bear. This is the new Trishula monster, and this card is really good. Of course, this is a level 11, and it has 3 effects. The first effect says when this card is Synchro summoning, you could banish up to 3 cards your opponent control. Second effect says when this card is when the Synchro summoning card you control and its owner is destroyed by an opponent's card, you know, like by battle, by card effect, you can special summon one Trishula Dragon of the Ice Bear from your extra deck or in the graveyard, special summon it, and Trishula's attack points becomes 3,300 attack. And also your face-up monsters your opponent control will lose half of the attack points, and their effects are negated. And you can only use each effect of Trishula Zero Dragon of the Ice Bear once per turn. So that card is really, really good. Banishing up to 3 cards your opponent control, and that effect is so good it does not target. And not to mention, you know, when it's destroyed either by an opponent, you know, like by battle or by card effects, and special summoning one Trishula Dragon of the Ice Bear from either from your extra deck or graveyard, and then make its attack points 3,300, and then cut the attack points and have a face-up opponent monster you control, and they're getting their effects helped out a lot as well. So that's actually pretty good. This is a really good card. And you only need to play one because, like I said, this card is level 11. Now, for the other Ice Barrier Synchros that I do play, of course, I do play one copy of the original Trishula Dragon of the Ice Bear, one copy of Gumnir Dragon of the Ice Bear, one copy of Deloran Tiger King of the Ice Bear, and one copy of Bryonic Dragon of the Ice Bear. So these are all the rest of the Ice Barrier Synchro monsters you gotta play. One of each is fine in my opinion. Trishula, you know, of course this card is limited to 1. Basically, you know, with Synchro summoning, you can banish 3 cards from your opponent, 1 from their hand, chosen at random, one from their field, and 1 from their graveyard. So that's pretty good. Gumnir is pretty good as well. You know, once per turn, target up to 2. You get to discard up to 2 cards. You know, it could be 1 or 2, and then destroy 1 or 2 cards your opponent controls. So that's pretty good as well. Deloran Tiger King of the Ice Bear is good as well. Deloran has an errata. It's not bad, but the effect is still good. It says you could target any number of face-up cards you control, bounce it back to the hand, and for each card Deloran gains 500 attack points for each face-up card that you bounce back from your hand. And you can only use this effect of Deloran, Tiger, and Ice Bear once per turn. So they gave it a hard once per turn effect, but Deloran's still good. And the good thing about this card, if you have freezing change on your side of the field, you could bounce it back to your hand, and then, you know, you can activate it again, you know, stuff like that as well. But remember, you only got to activate 1 freezing change per turn, so just keep that in mind. And also, Bryonic is really good as well, even though Bryonic has an errata, but it's still pretty good, you know, discard any number of cards from your hand to the graveyard and target the same number of cards your opponent control and bounce them back to the hand. And of course, you can only use that effect of Bryonic Dragon Ice Bear once per turn, so it's still pretty good as well. Deloran is also limited to 1, so I think because of the errata, it might go back up to 3. So I guess we'll see how it goes. All right, so those are the Ice Barrier Synchros. Now for the other Synchros I play, I'm going to show you the Synchro Tuners. Now these are the Synchro Tuners that you're going to special summon using the effect of Crystal Hackafyrus when you Synchro summon using Hackafyrus effect. I do play 1 copy of Core Dragon and 1 copy of Deep Sea Prima Donna. These are the Synchro Tuners that, you know, you can Synchro summon using Crystal Hackafyrus effect. Really, really good. Core Dragon, you know, its effect says once per turn, discard 1 card from your hand, target 1 card your opponent control, and destroy it. And the second effect says if the Synchro summoning card is sent from the field of the graveyard, you can draw 1 card. You can only use that effect once per turn. Deep Sea Prima Donna is pretty good as well. Her effect says your opponent cannot target a Synchro monster that uses this card as materials with monster effects, which you're not going to use that effect that much because you mostly want to Synchro summon this card using Crystal Hackafyrus effect. And the other effect, she says, you can only use each effect of the following effects of Deep Sea Prima Donna once per turn. First effect, you can target 1 card. You can target 1 card target one of your opponent's banished cards and add them to your hand. Or special summon a level 4 level water monster for your deck, and if you do, add that target to their hand. And the second effect says, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 banished card and shuffle it into the deck. So that's pretty good. It's good for like, your target advantage card. It's good for like if you use the effect of reveal of the ice bear when you banish it and stuff like that, and then shuffle it to that. Or you can, and targeting a banished card your opponent control, either add it to your hand or add it to their hand. Then special summon level 4 level water monster for your deck. It really help out a lot as well. Of course, Core Dragon is level 6 and Deep Sea Prima Dama is level 7. Now the other Synchro monsters that I do play one copy of Glacial Beast Iceberg Nova and one copy of the White Euro Whale. Glacial Beast Iceberg Nova really good. It has an effect that says each time another monsters you control is destroyed by an opponent's battle or by a card effect, by the opponent's attack or by card effect, if your opponent takes 600 points of damage during the battle phase, when your opponent activates a card effect while you control another monster, you can quick effect. You can negate the effect, and if you destroy that card, you can only use each effect of Glacier Beast Iceberg Nova once per turn. So this card is pretty good. White Euro Whale is pretty good. When it's Synchro summon, you destroy all opponents' face-up attack position monsters, and also this card attack up to twice per. It can attack twice during each battle phase, but only on opponent's monsters. So it's pretty good. These two cards are pretty good. That's it for the Synchros. As far as the XCs, I do play 2 copies of Totally Awesome and 1 copy of Bahamas Shark. So I do like playing the Bahamas Shark Totally Awesome stuff. This is really good as well, For Totally Awesome, negating an opponent's card, like Monster Spell and Trap and all this stuff, it helps out a lot. So these are the XCs that I play. I only play 3 of them. As far as links, I only play 3. 1 copy of Miss Starboy. Generic card, but it's really good since all your Iceberg monsters are water, so it's pretty good. 1 copy of Maurice's Core Anemone. Anemone is pretty good because her effect says once per turn you target a water monster in your graveyard that's 15 or less and special summon it to the zone that this card points to, so that's pretty good as well. And then the last link one to round off the extra deck is 1 copy of Crystron Hack of Fibrax. Hack of Fibrax is pretty good, if this card is link summon, special summon tuna monster for hand or deck. And the second effect says you could, during your opponent's main phase or battle phase, banish this card, special summon a Synchro tuna monster for your extra deck. The special summoning is treated as a Synchro summoning. And of course, you're only going to use the effect of Hack of Fibrax once per turn. So these cards, really good. They do help out this deck a lot. That's going to be it for the extra deck. Now for the side deck, and I'm going to show you what side deck cards you want to play if you want to make an Ice Bear deck for yourselves. I play 1 copy Warlock of the Ice Bear. This card's pretty good. It has the same effect as Anti-Spell Frigate, but for effect monster. Of course, you have to control another face-up monster in order to use that effect. I also play 1 copy of Shock Truce of the Ice Bear. That card's pretty good. You tribute summon this card. Target a water monster on the field and destroy it, and then add an Ice Bear monster for your deck to your hand. And the good thing about this card, if your opponent controls a water monster, you can tribute it, destroy your opponent's mind, and then search for an Ice Bear monster. Pretty good. And I also play 1 copy of Spellbreaker of the Ice Bear. It has the same effect as Cold Wave, but an effect monster. Of course, you have to use that effect once per turn, and it has to be face up in the field in order to use the effect to resolve. You got to send 1 card for you in the graveyard, and then both players cannot activate any spell cards until the next turn. So it's pretty good. So these are the side deck cards to play. As far as the other cards, I do play 3 copies of Swords of Revealing Lights. Stop your opponent from attacking for 3 turns. The good thing about this card, if you have this card and you got Doloran, you could use Doloran's effect, bounce back the swords if you have like 2 turns, and then if the 3rd turn's about to come up, you could just bounce it back, and then you could just redo it all over again. So it's pretty cool. So 3 copies of Swords of Revealing Lights, and I also play 3 copies of Fury of Shiru Shin. This spell card, it searches for a torrential tribute, and also it protects your water monsters from being destroyed by an opponent's card effect, but you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. So it's really good. And as far as the trap cards, just to round off the side deck, I do play 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. This card can be searched with Fury of the Shadow Shin, and 3 copies of the Torrential Reborn to round off the side deck. Torrential Reborn is pretty good, like if you're a water monster, it's destroyed by battle of a card effect sent to graveyard, you special summon any those number of water monsters from your graveyard, and if you do, your opponent takes 500 points of damage for each water monster special summon that uses this effect. You only activate 1 Torrential Reborn once per turn, so that's pretty good as well. And these cards really do help a lot. And that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed my updated version of my Ice Bear deck profile for the post-freezing change. Overall, I do like the new Ice Bear support. I wish it would have done a lot better, but it's pretty good. It's pretty fun to play, so yeah. I do love Ice Bears though, and I do love the new support for Ice Bears. Even though it's pretty fun to play and all that stuff. So that's gotta be it for this video, guys. So don't forget to like this video, share, subscribe, and post your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about my updated version of my Ice Bear deck profile. That's gotta be it for this video, guys. So this is Domingo Hero Network. All I can say is take care, have a good day, goodbye, everyone. Domingo Hero Network is signing out. Peace.